Let's have a look at question 9 to 12. Now, this passage talks about utopia and the notion of various thinkers regarding utopia, a utopian society. A utopian society, for your information, is an ideal society where everybody is happy and it's things are like equal, communal. So this is how it has been defined. Now, we begin by talking about a thinker, Thomas More, who gave a notion of utopia, and he talked about it as an egalitarian communal society of shared property. So his notion, his vision was a very balanced vision, which wherein utopian hopes were balanced by dystopian fears. However, half a millennium since, what has happened is that we have acquired a more dystopian notion, and we are now overburdened with dystopian nightmares, right? So, our society today, the postmodern society, as this passage calls it, is burdened with dystopian nightmares. It does not have a roadmap as a positive roadmap for building a better world. Then it talks about how Karl Marx criticized the term utopian, the term utopia. Okay, Karl Marx felt that the utopian thinkers were giving a blueprint of an ideal society. However, they were not looking at the realistic forces in the process of giving this blueprint. They were ignoring those realistic forces. So, another thinker, Frederick Jameson, actually had a diametrically opposite view. He felt that utopian imagination was essential to human liberation. He said that the imaginative inability to conceive of positive systemic change is one of the hallmarks of postmodernism. That means that our postmodern society today is unable to think of any positive systemic change. Okay, why? Because it did not have a utopian imagination. So this is what Jameson said. Jameson's view is pretty important in this passage. Then we also talk about other thinkers, other leading figures. For instance, Margaret Thatcher, who felt that there was no alternative to conservatism, to conservative ethos. Then we talk about how Karl Marx criticized thinkers like Charles Fourier and Henry Dissent, who again were supporters of utopian idealism. In Marx's opinion, actually, scientific socialism was superior to utopian socialism. He felt that utopian socialism again was disconnected from reality, and Wallerstein also held the same views as Marx, and he said that utopias are breeders of illusions and therefore inevitably of disillusion. So again, he was a critique of utopia. Then, towards the end, we again talk about Jameson, and these are some of the most important sentences of the passage where we talk about how Jameson said that it is utopian, this utopian notion that keeps the hope of a better society alive, that keeps social agitation alive in the hope of a better society. So he insisted that it is difficult enough to imagine any radical political program today without the conception of systemic otherness, of an alternate society which only the idea of utopia seems to keep alive, however feebly. And then the author agrees with Jameson's notion that while a utopian imagination isn't sufficient in and of itself to build a better world, but it's an essential prerequisite. So, this is what this passage is about, the notion of various thinkers regarding a utopian imagination. Which sequence of words below best captures the narrative of the passage? Now, let's have a look. Utopia, okay, dystopia, we talk about it as well. Feckless. This is mentioned in just one sentence in the passage that talks about Margaret Thatcher's notion, and then we say that if Margaret Thatcher is correct, then any utopian vision is feckless and doomed. So this is just one sentence. It is not something that is capturing the way this passage has been narrated and the main highlights of the passage. No. So this could be eliminated easily. Then this is again incomplete. Utopia, okay. Better world, fine. Some of us have defined utopia like that. Some of the thinkers have defined it like that. Utopian socialism has been discussed. Even scientific socialism has been discussed. But the last paragraph in this passage is very important because it talks about the views of Jameson, and then the author agrees with Jameson's views that yes, a utopian imagination is necessary. It's a prerequisite for bringing about some change. So that has to be captured when we capture the narrative of the passage. Otherwise, if we just stop at scientific socialism, then everything that is mentioned later has not been covered here. This is incomplete. Okay. Between B and C, C is a very tempting answer. So this is a tricky question because C tempts students. We talk about various thinkers here: Thomas More, Jameson, Thatcher, Wallerstein. But again, this is incomplete. First of all, it leaves out certain key thinkers. For instance, Karl Marx has been talked about in detail in the passage. So why leave out Karl Marx? Secondly, it does not mention the point about how utopia is a prerequisite for social agitation, for keeping social agitation alive. So that is why we reject it, and that is why B is the best fit because it talks about both utopia and dystopia. Those have been two key points discussed in the passage. It talks about Karl Marx's views in a way. Utopian socialism. Karl Marx talked about it, and said that scientific socialism is superior to utopian socialism. So this notion that has been discussed in detail is also captured here. And lastly, social agitation is mentioned. So it kind of closes it correctly, and this is complete. Okay, that's why B. But yes, this question could be tricky because of B and C, because of that confusion.